Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here. This is going to be a side-by-side comparison of the N5 rules that released, so version 1, versus the update that Corvus Belli have just announced. And you can see that on their website, and they allude to a few things, but obviously alluding to it and then actually looking at the specifics are two kind of very different things. So a few things that we know have changed just from this blog article that they shared is like jump and climb. Now it's not just the movement values that have changed, it's how they're displayed in profiles, and it's the rules themselves, which we're going to go through. Same with cautious movement, FT master, a whole bunch of other things. And then there's been some army updates that they say are army updates, but the last time I checked, which was admittedly about 6-7 hours ago, hadn't actually changed at all. Now, before I get into this video, I need to do an absolutely huge shout out to Chris Allcock. He is the genius that appeared in the New Zealand Infinity chat with basically a, hey, look, I've done this document that highlights all of the changes if anyone finds it interesting. And I was like, oh my word, you've just saved me hours of flicking through and trying to figure out what's different. And then he private messaged me. He was like, would a side-by-side be of any use to you? Yeah, yes it would. So thank you so much, Chris. This video would not be happening this quickly or this cleanly without you. And so really appreciate you letting me use this. Thank you so much. And let's dive in and have a look at the differences that Chris has highlighted. A couple of the ones that you're going to see here are the page changes. So you can see in the old version it's 169, it's 170, that's not major. It's actually a little while before we get into this one. Again, it's just a wording change to include VH, which we all knew vehicles were hackable, but this is just tidying up the rules as well. It's this one. This was the one that I'd seen earlier and was like, oh, this is the one I need to stop at, but it's quite a few pages in. So it's just saying keeping back more than one trooper, such as strategos, command tokens, all of that sort of stuff. That's public information. Now, this is a weird one, and we get this every so often, at least in the Infinity meta in New Zealand. And then when rules drop, we look at a rule change and go, that's actually just how we've been playing it. But we can see how maybe some people would have interpreted it differently, and that might mean that their meta plays it differently. So this is a good example. So even at the tournament I was at recently, someone said, oh, I've got 2 units held back. May have been private information before in a tournament. Some people would have said, oh, I would never have disclosed that. But it's like, yeah, like it doesn't really change anything because what they are is important rather than how many there are. This one again, combat group next to the trooper, tactical order, just clarifying. It's cleaner. Again, this is another one, I actually do this anyway. I put tactical orders, irregular orders next to the trooper on the table, and not always in the pool. That's just so that I don't forget that they exist. So cautious movement, this one does get a fairly substantial update. So what you're seeing here is that the first value of its move attribute generating no enemies. This is tidying the wording, it seems like, because how we were playing it with M5 wasn't actually super different to how it's being played in M4. So the old rule was when a trooper declares cautious movement, it must begin and end at 2 points on the game table that are outside of all enemy models and markers line of fire and zone of controls, which isn't major change to how it's supposed to be. And then when a hackable trooper in model form declares cautious movement, it must begin and end at 2 points of the game table that are outside the enemy hacker's hacking zones. The new bit, kind of a new-ish first bullet point, allows the trooper to move up to the first movement value as attribute, generating no enemy orders in the process. Restriction for this cautious movement to generate no arrows, it must begin and end at 2 points of the game table that are outside the enemy line of fire, all enemy hacking models and movements. Restriction for the cautious movement, hackable trooper. So this is, to me, it's a tidying. There was nothing in the, maybe it's just because I didn't look at it closely enough before going from M4 to M5, is that it didn't seem that different. To me, but again, someone probably read this and went, oh, actually we can now do it this way, and that's just me not being able to read things massively different. So here we got, in the old one it just said tags cannot declare this common skill, and then now it's just saying this common skill cannot be declared by tags, remotes, vehicles, troopers on motorcycles, troopers with the aerial special skill, or troopers in the targeted state. The in targeted state is quite interesting though. I don't know that I've ever come across it, but it's another cool one that I never would have thought about. So yeah, a few little updates there. First value. Now this is where there are the substantial changes, is jump. So jump, there was a big hoo-ha by me and everyone that it was like, oh, fixed values for climb and jump. That's a bit weird. There's a big change to how the mechanic worked beforehand. And they've basically removed, sort of, they've removed that. I like this change. What they're basically saying is you get the first move value and add 2 inches to it. I think that makes more sense because the difference there the old mechanic, if you didn't get to play N5 for the brief period that we had an old mechanic of N5 jump, which sounds ridiculous to be saying, you had things like, I think it was maybe the Squalo, Zeta is a good example. So that in M4 at least had climbing plus and had an 8-inch move. So then you look at what's happening with climbing plus and also jump by extension, because they're the same sort of mechanics. And you're looking at 8-inch climb or 8-inch jump. For something that could move very well already, that actually wasn't a buff. But then to something that could only move 4 inches, then doubling its move was a significant buff. So it was very disproportionately beneficial to different troopers. And now you've got this, where it's basically take that first movement value and add 2 inches, which feels a lot better and in the spirit of the game, which is if you already move well already, now you move even betterer. And that's kind of great. So I think this is better. There's also a mechanic that you would have seen if you paused when I was scanning through that blog, that some units have got like a +3 to jump, or like effectively they've got an even bigger bonus than the 2 inches. I like that. It fits with the overall mechanic. So I like this update for jump, and by extension when we talk about climb, we're going to be talking about the same thing. Yeah, it's cleaner. It fits with how the rest of Infinity works. So I like it a lot. So yeah, 4+2 instead of 6 inches, not 8 inches. So just tidier, reads a lot better. It's less to forget. You can just look at the profile and go, oh yeah, I've got jump +2 and jump is my first movement value. Okay, so request the Speedball. A couple of changes here. So you have to do it at the beginning of, effectively requesting Speedball, you have to do at the start. This cannot be done partway through the order expenditure sequence. So nice and clear there that you've got to do it basically at the beginning of your turn, if you're going to do it at all. Another thing here is that Vita pack update. So it leads cancellation of the unconscious state of an allied trooper with the vitality attribute by removing 1 single wound from those that they have received, which is nicer, because even in the tournament we had an instance where something was wandering around with the Vita pack, and it was like, I basically shrug off that whole interaction. Because they took 1 wound. I was like, yeah, I've got Vita pack though, so I can ignore it. And this is a bit better. I like the fact that it's actually revitalizing something. So something that doesn't have doctor or paramedic can like auto guarantee heal, which is nice as well, because in the game mechanics you can lose things for trying to heal them. This is like a guaranteed heal for when you really need it. So I do prefer that. So you do a short skill, and it's still a short skill of an order, so it's not auto, which is brilliant, which is not a change to how it was beforehand. So I think this just cleans it up. It's quite nice. Auto repair suit seems to work in the same way. Switch on. Cancellation of immobilized A and B and stunned of an allied trooper. Short skill in silhouette contact with an allied trooper. Yeah, it seems as though you can only now use these on allied troopers and not on yourself, which again seems nicer, at least at the surface reading, because with switched on, you'd put that onto a big thing that was going to tear through the opposition, knowing that it couldn't be immobilized, it couldn't be, or at least once, so you could charge through a hacking network or something like that. So I think this is more about clearing states than about buffing something in preparation for an attack and then ignoring those attacks, which to me also seems quite clearer. And then you've got the example with the auto repairs, which is worth a read if you're using Speedball quite. I think the booty chart is tricking me there. It looks like it's breaking it out. So roll number 16 was just tag BS attack. Oh yeah, so it's tidying up a styling error that I didn't even really notice, where it was like, if you rolled a 16, tags got PS attack shock, but what about non-tags? And then that was if you rolled a 17. And then if you roll an 18, everyone gets a multi-sniper rifle. Then if you roll a 19, only tags get immunity arm. So it's correcting that, where there's always something that a tag can get, and if you don't have a tag with the tag, it doesn't have the booty, they get something else. So just tidying something that I hadn't even noticed. This, do you know what? This highlighting of things is really good. Thank you again, Chris. So then you can see that the climbing plus effects. So I was reading this earlier, and to give a rough summary of my interpretation of it, and if you watch my previous videos, which kind of got some bits right and some bits wrong, how it seemed was that in order to declare a climb, whether you had climbing plus or not, you had to be touching the wall you then climbed, and then you could kind of move-ish when you got to the top. Back in M4, you could basically have if you had an 8-inch move, you could move an inch, move 4 inches up, and then, you know, move 3 inches, 4 inches across, all in with one, and basically some of it was using climbing plus, some of it was using normal move. Then in M5 version 1, they seem to have nerfed that, so that you had to have started. They're now back to more of an N4 flavour, where if your first short skill is a move, you can do some of that on flat surfaces, you can walk up to the wall, then you can climb up the wall, then you can go flat, like on the flat surface, very easily. So it seems cleaner. Now, there's still a little bit of confusion here, in that from reading some of the other rules, when you have a climb plus, that only applies to your first movement skill, which makes sense and is logical. And so if you're doing a move effectively, and you're doing it on a vertical surface, so you're using climbing plus, you would only apply the bonus to your first short skill, and then your second short skill distance is your second short skill distance, regardless of what surface you're moving on. Now, some people have come back and said, oh, that once per order means that you can actually only go up a vertical surface for your first movement skill, and then if you need to declare a second movement skill, you can't do it on a vertical surface because you can't do climbing plus. I believe, and my interpretation of the rule is that the climbing plus bit is more that bonus to your first short skill, not necessarily a restriction on your second movement skill. So that's my interpretation. I think that's what they're trying to basically do, is that the climbing plus bonus only applies to the first short skill, your first movement value, and then if you're going to continue moving, it doesn't happen again. And the reason why they're saying once per order is because if you're going to spend another order to do exactly the same thing, you're going to re-get those bonuses. That's how I'm reading that rule. But I'm always keen, and definitely look in the comments, because there's always people who are much better at rules interpretation than me. Well, they're saying that some of them got the order count thing wrong, which I'm not going to say I was right, but pretty sure I was right. So you can see the example here with the Shikami example. That sort of helps explain it. I mean, it doesn't, in the sense that I was trying to talk about what if you're doing 2 vertical surface movements. But this helps you kind of go, yep, I can move 2 inches up to the wall, then I can climb upward, and then I can go flat. Like it's basically back to N4. With the caveat that we're still in that here we go, climbing plus and multiple troop types. You'll notice that's not green because that hasn't changed. So if you're doing climbing plus in a fire team, whereas in N4, everyone would just declare a move, and then some things would go vertical, we're still in M5 land of, it's a climb action, but the things with climbing plus can do more movement than others. But if the rest of the fire team are not doing a climb, they basically idle. So you've still got to watch out for those mixed fire teams, but we're closer to climbing plus being back to what it was in M4 if you've been avoiding playing it. Combat jump, that doesn't look like it's a major change. It's the command module that I really want to talk about. Oh, we've got engineer here. So you can see here that there's like engineer reroll X. That, I believe, was the thing at the start of M5, but we just didn't notice that it didn't have rules, and I don't think anyone noticed because it was very self-explanatory, because the reroll X type thing is very straightforward. So while they've added this, it's great. It's just clarification, but I don't think it's majorly revolutionizing how any of us play. But then you may have a meta where that was a big change. FT Master, this does get a bit, and I did use FT Master in my last tournament, so I need to be aware that there's an extra bullet point, an extra bonus thing on FT Master now. So if all members of the fire team already have the regular training characteristics on their unit profile, apply a plus 2 inch bonus to the team leader's zone of control when making coherency checks. So they would get a 10 inch coherency, not the standard zone of control, 8 inches. Only for coherency, though. Sadly, the fire team that I was using at the weekend was not normally regular, so I would not have had that benefit anyway. I'm going to skim through. Inspiring leadership, this was another one that got the change, same as the FT Master. Obviously, inspiring leadership is kind of like a special FT Master, so it makes sense that they get the bonus rule. And then troopers with religious don't apply the courage special skill, don't apply the effect. Not of that, read that fully. If you're using inspiring leadership, it's so niche. Like if you're taking Joan, you'll know that rule and you'll care about it. If you're not taking Joan, you probably don't need to learn it. Mine layer, the value greater than 1 is listed in the brackets after the special skill. The profile can have that number of weapons. So yeah, deployable mine, 2 or mine layer 2 is a thing, and that means that you can deploy 2 at the start of deployment. It's a cool mechanic. I love it. There's another thing that I'm hoping we're going to get to, because that's now 2 things that I'm going to potentially have to talk about without showing you on the screen if they're not here. Super jump. We've talked a little bit about that. It's effectively, it's very, very similar to Climbing Plus. So no more fixed distances, which I've already talked about. Just your first movement value plus a bonus, which is then either listed on your profile. So some of them have super jump 3, and that's 3 inches. But if not, then they could do 2, which is super jumpy. No other major changes until we get to transmutation. Camouflage marker of a troop with transmutation. Hatching has a silhouette S of 2. At the end of this, I'm going to try and remember and talk about a rule that I wish that they would update that they seem to never want to update. Bang bomb. Dodge only applies against attacks declared by enemy troopers who are within the user's line of fire and zone of control, and does not apply against attacks made by template. We're having a conversation about this at the weekend, and people are like, oh, that's the only time I want to use bang bomb, is when I'm triggering a mine or something like that. Deactivator. Passing the whip roll does not prevent the enemy from deployable weapon or deployable piece of cover from triggering during the current order. Nano screen. These mods do not apply to BS attacks with comms attack trait. Trying to think of what BS attacks have a comms attack trait. Top of my head. Here we go, command module. This is where we're getting to some different stuff. So, TLDR, it works how we thought it was going to work, but it wasn't worded, obviously. In that, you look at your opponent's orders that they've generated. If they've generated fewer than 10 orders, and you're including regular, and you're including tactical awareness, and you're including lieutenant orders that have been changed to regular thanks to Strategos. If they have 10 or less, if they have 10 or fewer, you cannot strip their order pool. If they have more than 10, you can remove 2 regular orders from that pool. So at the beginning of M5, there were 2 very distinct camps about this. Some were like, no, that's not the intent. Some of us were basically like, I don't understand why that's a thing, because there's no condition with how it was written. It was effectively, if your list contains the ability to generate more than 10 regular orders, then you can be stripped. If it can't, then it can't be. It was like, A, that's revealing private information. There was a whole big discussion around it. But the wording was very ambiguous. It seemed very much it was about your list, which was a weird thing for Corvus Belli to be focusing on. And so the other side of the camp was like, we believe the intent is that if you're generating fewer than 10 orders, then you can't be stripped, kind of like the old school limited insertion, which disappeared in M4. Corvus Belli have now clarified it. It is what a good majority of us thought, which is if you're generating fewer than 10 orders, including tactical awareness, so regular orders, tactical awareness, and lieutenants that have turned into regular, you cannot have your order pool stripped. This is going to make armies like JSA a lot more attractive than they were under the old interpretation of the rule. And most people leant towards the more conservative interpretation of the rule, which was the list-based interpretation. This is so much cleaner. It means I'm definitely going to be going into JSA more this year, because I felt that with my interpretation of the rule originally, JSA were very powerful because they had a lot of hidden deployment. I could lean into that hidden deployment. It felt very thematic for JSA that there's lots of things hidden, and you can't strip my orders because I'm actually already penalising myself by starting with not very many orders. And so I'm very excited to play that as a bit of a characteristic of JSA. I wonder how many other factions are going to change to play to this and actually have more hidden deployment. Is it going to change the meta by actually there being more hidden deployment out there and people leaning into it? So I love it. I love that they've clarified it, and I love obviously what the outcome has ended up being. This is where the comparisons are going to get a bit trickier, because while the page numbers are the same, there's been a huge switch around to a degree in layouts. I'm hoping we get to the Fireteam bonus level 2. In the reactive turn, the Fireteam members benefit from the skill in the reactive turn. Oh, this is just the BS attack +1 special dice, which again applies to medikits and gizmo kits when used as a BS weapon. That's how we've always been playing it, so that's not a major shock to us. The new one, and I really need to find this rule because you're not going to believe me unless I can show you it. I was trying to do this within 30 minutes to give you like kind of a high level, these are the major changes that you need to know about. But the other major change that you need to know about is that deployable turrets now have restrictions on them. Deployable cover, no, it doesn't matter. I kind of saw this in someone else's summary. Clint Florker. Sorry if I've gotten that wrong, but I'm trying to remember from this morning. He does this summary every time there's changes, and he kind of does bullet points. This is what we've seen. And so is like a much better TLDR than what I've just done. And in his one, he spotted that the deployable turrets now have, they can't be reloaded effectively. They've gained like a non-reloadable state, which is a new state for things probably created just for turrets to stop turret spam, which I am guilty of doing. At the tournament at one time I had 3, almost 4 turrets down on the table. Because reload is so powerful now, where you just have to be in zone of control of something with baggage, and because Morats have Icadrons that have baggage and they have like 9 points, I was just parking an Icadron near Dr. Worm and then just reloading, dumping, to defend in decap or something like that. So I'm guilty of doing it, don't get me wrong. I feel disgusting and I had to shower 3 times afterwards, but I can see now why they've nerfed it. I'm glad they've nerfed it despite using it. It wasn't a huge, I didn't have it spammed against me. And I stopped at 3, so I'm trying to justify my level of horribleness here, especially in a tournament setting. But I do feel like it needed to be controlled. Like having a turret that just gets placed that is a roadblock is great anyway. I don't think you need to be able to lay 5 of them in a coordinated order, you know, or whatever. So I think Corvus Belli have done a great thing here. There's one thing, so that's all the rules updates I think that are major. Again, go to Affinity Global Community and look for Clint Florker's post. I will hopefully make this video quickly so that you can have a look at it and pause it at key bits as well. But the rule that I wish Corvus Belli would actually address, it's not a major one. Can I be real? Corvus Belli have done a great job with this game. The fact that I've got 1 or 2 things that I can say, oh yeah, I'm glad they've changed that or something. It's just normal, but it's healthy. But look at this. We've gone through a major rules addition change in M5. We've then gone to a very quick update, and the updates are small and they're all fantastic. Like some of it's wording tidy ups, some of it's just, we didn't intend for you to be able to spam that, or we didn't intend for things that already have good movement to then not benefit from super jump and climb, so we're going to change it slightly. And with all of these instances, they've actually made the whole mechanic better. So super jump, climbing plus. Hey look, we're just going to give you get plus 2 inches to your first short skill move, and we're going to give some things a plus 3 inch climb or jump. This is all amazing. Like it actually suits and fits better the existing mechanic of Infinity, which we all love. And then it's bringing things in line whilst also giving us something a bit new. The thing that they need to somehow address, and this is only a small thing, and it's not important or major, is the mine situation. There's been quite a lot of discussions around this, because when you lay a mine, you lay it as a camo token, an S2 camo token. But a mine isn't S2 in size. It's SX or S1, which is effectively that. So what you end up with, this weird interaction with when you're trying to work out the trigger of a mine is, or the tree, or the zone of control, or whatever this camo token, especially if you're trying to do shell games where you might go, hey look, I've got 3 of these lined up, 2 of them are going to be mines and 1 of them is the real thing, but you don't know which one. It's like, well, I can kind of like, if it's S2 and I'm moving and there's like a little bit of terrain between us, either it can see me or it can't. And can you tell me whether it can see? No, I can't, because I'm giving away that it's a mine. And then likewise, when you're trying to do a discover shoot, effectively you can't see it, even though it's an even though what you're seeing is an S2, even though it's a camo S2, but the thing you're discovering is actually only like SX, so the size of a base. And it's just that confusion around it. A fix would be to make mines S2. I mean, I know that thematically you're like, oh, how would that even be a thing? Mines lay on the ground, people tread on them. We're already in a situation where this doesn't work, because these mines are triggering when you get like 9.5 inches from them. But this also then helps, like, if a mine can see you and it's on a rooftop down and you can see it, like it's actually fitting with the main mechanic of the rules itself, and just come up with some cool thing. They've now done 6-foot sized mines so that they can trigger, like when something goes. They're more like proxy mines than like an actual mine as we would know it right now. And so I think that's the rule. That's the last rule in my mind. That's kind of this actually just creates weird interactions. Now I've been very lucky that every opponent that I've ever had, especially in my tournament, it was just like, yeah, that's an S2, but it can't see you until you come around there, which was basically when the base could see me. But also the interaction was, I knew it was mine because I'd seen him do place deployable. So in some cases it's kind of obvious, but it is just one of those things where, especially at deployment, it can create confusion unnecessarily. And so I think make them all S2, they're discoverable as S2s, they trigger as S2s, and then that's just, we don't even need to think about it anymore. They play as they look, as they're probably intended, and all you have to do is change the silhouette profile. Markers don't block line of fire, so would a solid mine block line of fire through it? Don't know, don't care, haven't thought that much about it. Maybe. Could you use mines for cover? No, just like you can't use alloy troopers for cover. But could it block line of fire? Yeah, why not? You know, I imagine Ariadne, if they had an S2 mine, it would be chunky. Hide behind it. Sadly, because of how mine mechanic work in Infinity, there's no negative about you standing right next to a mine that's about to explode, because they're smart and they point their blast towards the enemy and not everyone else around them. So that's the last thing. Did you catch any additional updates other than the super weird explanation for how combat jump works in this season's rules? Which, weirdly, the chart was more complicated than the actual rule itself. And I think the thing that they were trying to tell people was that when we say you can deploy along the edge of the exclusion zone, that means that you can be on the outside edge. That means you can be on the inside edge. It means you can be on the line, 50-50. And again, some of us were just like, well, of course. Like, you've told us what you mean by that on, like, touching the deployment edge. You haven't said how much of it has to be touching, or like, anyway, they've done a big chart that shows that. Have a read through the rules if you fancy a bit of a explain a laugh that, again, is one of the rare occasions where a visual demonstration actually maybe complicates things more than the written demonstration. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope it's been helpful. I realise it's been a little bit rambly as I've tried to jump through things. I'm hoping in my edit I can clean things up a little bit, but it's unlikely because I want this to get out quickly. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll be back soon with more videos.